I'd been out for 10 years, and now they want me back. Well, Jack, if you're gonna bring out the dinosaurs again and sponsor me to check it out, it looks like Daddy's gotta put on his shiny shoes. I'm coming for you, T-Rex. I'm back. I love it when devs are kind of okay with us giving feedback on their games in public. That's really, really nice. We do a lot of feedback on games, but most often it's behind the scenes. Don't tell anybody. But the devs of Exo Primal were super excited for us to jump in and test it out and also give our feedback, which is exactly why we're here. Yes, it's a sponsored video, but they wanted it all out in the open, which is a breath of fresh air, let me tell you. So what is Exo Primal? Well, it's a third-person shooter action game where you're going to be taking on dinosaurs throughout history. It's got an involved story that you can get involved in. It has the choice of PvE, PvP, and custom stuff and mixes. And essentially what you're going to be doing is going through a mission through various checkpoints until ultimately you can either meet up with the enemy team, which turns into a little bit like of an Overwatch-style PvP battle, or a very cool thing that can happen, which I'll talk about later, is you can end up working together in a cooperative mode. And this variety is what's really setting this off in an interesting way to us. I was a little surprised as to how much fun we had with this, because they put in a lot of thought into it. It's so team-based survival with it. They had us testing one mode, which is their Wargames. So 5v5 is what it was. So 5 players on one team, 5 players on the other. And then you're in a bit of a race. And the race is to get to your final mission first. And that gives you a slight of time advantage once you get to that final mission. So you'll start off with your team and you'll see the enemy team as well. And you can emote at each other and do all that kind of stuff. Then you get set on, and you can actually see the other team as ghosts that are completing missions in a similar area. And you'll also have this wonderful guide who will let you know is you are completing your missions faster than the other team, or you're doing them slower than the other team. And if you're doing them slower, faster, then advantages can be given to you in the terms of extra drops that might get you back up into the mix so they can keep it kind of even. Matches were nice and short, which I think is important in a game like this, like 10 minutes-ish each round. And what you do is move through a cityscape or a variety of different maps. And so typically it would end in a cube push where you had to push this cube to the other end by putting players on the cube that you'll have seen before. And then ultimately you can see the enemy team then and you can engage in some form of PvP. However, they do have a PvE mode. For people who don't care about PvP at all, there's absolutely a PvE mode. That is going to come later, but specifically they had us testing the war game structure. So the typical layout of a mission would be to move to an area where you're probably going to get zerged by a whole host of dinosaurs. And this can get really out of hand really quickly. The big trick, of course, is the mission objectives at the top of your screen. You might get invaded by hundreds and hundreds of dinosaurs, yet in order to progress to the next mission point, you actually need to focus on the ones that are part of the mission objectives. Sometimes that is kill everything that spawned, but oftentimes, as certainly as we got into later levels where more maps unlocked and more bosses unlocked, that started to change a little bit. So it might be like only focus on the flying dinosaurs, even though you're getting attacked by other things. And that led us to having team assignments, which is exactly what you want in this. Certain players that were going around and dealing with the ground enemies, so other people can focus there, especially the melees. The melee suits, they were focused on the ground enemies, like the range deals with these, and then it swapped around as you went through, say, 3 or 4 of these objectives, where you then dealt with very different things. So I actually thought that was so fun. And then when you get to the cube, that doesn't mean if you get to the cube last that you've lost. Absolutely not, because then you can engage in a bit of PvP. And also, depending on how each team manages this process, the more people on the cube, the faster it moves. How many people are you going to put forward? How many people are you going to get to move the cube forward? You can shoot and destroy their cube. So it actually shuts down and stops moving until you eventually get to the apex of it and then finish it off, sometimes even with a giant boss battle. So a lot of variety here. And what we found is we got five members of our community on my team, 5 members of our community on the other team. We worked together to get some relatively even matches side by side. Huge amount of fun. And that was interesting because there's custom games are not in the game yet. So we were like queuing at the same time to try and get each other in. But let me tell you about the raid bosses. It has raid bosses. So although the standard practice is 5v5 until an ultimate conclusion in these 10-minute rounds, every now and again, it will randomly put you into a cooperative mode where all 10 players now work together in order to overcome a raid boss. And if any of you have played Destiny, this was exactly like that.
A special
What's all 10 of us?
Whoa!
You know
Oh, it's all of us!
In this mission, both teams will cooperate to
No
achieve the
shit!
objective.
No.
However, if you cannot defeat the dinosaur with
Emote spam!
or if
Hold
you
C.
suffer
Emote.
elimination
Hold C.
beyond expected metrics, you will fail the mission and be flagged.
There's frigging raid bosses in this?
Fight well.
We
Respawns
gotta kill
remaining 30 out of 30.
2,000 raptors.
Oh,
Holy
Oh!
Additional warnings.
Oh shit now!
Son of a sniper, you seem to thrive as death approaches.
Oh shit now.
Switch to healer for this.
Where's...
Guessing the purple spots are the top spots we need to hit. Yep. There you go, yellow.
The bosses had proper mechanics. They had things that you had to deal with. You had line of sight mechanics. You had ad spawning. You had ground effects. You had to heal each other, res the other team. And it gave a really nice contrast to this race. So it's not just the same thing over and over again. Is then you got mixed into a co-op mode. And I want to see so much more of this. I loved the raid bosses. And oftentimes I was like hoping it would proc so we could work together with our friends in order to take on a giant raid boss, especially after the first go, because I now see the mechanics. I want to see if I can implement it much better, be far more efficient with the DPS. All those kind of things were what we were going for. But the big selling point that was surprisingly good is the customization of the characters. So similar to what you've seen in something like Warframe, is you have a big variety of suits that fit certain roles. So you've got support, which is your healer role and provides other sort of hybrid DPS. You've got your tank role, actually aggroing all the raptors, all the dinosaurs, all the Dilophosauruses, all those things onto them and have big tanking abilities in order to sustain that damage. And then, of course, you've got DPS. And within there, you've got multiple varieties of suits. I ended up gravitating towards the roller skating support class, the ranged healer, because that could swap between DPS and healing, which meant that I could very quickly, and they did this very fluidly, I could swap what my role was in order to support the team. If there was a big wave, I had a huge DPS AoE spell. Then I could drop back in the PvP mode and go back into more of a healing, using line of sight in order to keep out of range of the enemy snipers while helping my team be overhealed and providing them with extra shields. But the cool thing about this is you can swap it during the match. So some matches I would start in the DPS suit, and during the rounds even, you can change your suit to something else if you want to. You can entirely swap your role, your team setup, the meta of it, into something entirely different depending on what's spawning, because you started to get used to, oh, there's a boss coming. Maybe I want to be a healer here. Oh, there's just going to be waves of enemies here. Maybe I want to be a pure DPS here. And it gave you that variety in that. And not only that, you could then customize your individual loadouts during the mission. I truly appreciated this because on the one hand, I could choose my support role to have a giant DPS railgun cannon. On the other hand, I might want to put down a ground healing effect so I can help the people who are stuck in. So if I've got my tank surrounded by hundreds of raptors, maybe I want to put a ground healing effect on top of him in order to support him there. Or perhaps these are low health enemies, so my big cannon is more useful. And all it does is put that spell on cooldown when you swap it. So you can fire it off, swap it very quickly, have a totally different special ability. And of course, there's ultimates in the game. Change that around, make it all work. That was so fun, is being able to customize on the fly. And we ended up rolling like 5 DPS for the first 2 waves, go to a tank support healer role. Maybe we want to go 2 tanks here, and we had all the people swapping around. On top of that, there's a lot of stuff dropping in the missions which help you out. So you can have turrets that can drop, walls, buildable walls that can drop, and you can also get a dinosaur that you get to mind control. This is fantastic. This is so fun. I got to do this and I wiped out the enemy team because we were behind. So I took on the role of the dinosaur, smashed their cube, was chomping them all down. Now, if you're prepared for this, you can save your ults for it and trash that dinosaur into the floor. Or you can spawn your own dinosaur to fight it back. Or you want to send it over there. So there's a lot of choices that you can go here. Ultimately led to a way more fun experience than honestly I was expecting. No offense to the devs. Seen games like this before, was a little like, okay, we'll see, but it turned out to be so much more fun, especially with the graphical stuff and them all falling down to the floor.
Oh, please tell me it's raptors swarming down the...
Over here,
Yep.
a raptor swarm
That's so cool.
is cresting over the Ideas Corporation building. The tower provides...
Look at them all
Oh,
covered
so
in-
surely they all die, right?
I advise you to prepare your
No way.
Oh
There's
my
no way they
God.
survive.
You can hit them while they're in the...
I saw no
That
damage
actually
numbers.
looks-
Whoa! This is so cool. What's coming though? Because we only got to try the 1 game mode. Obviously, a lot more game modes are coming. I talked about the PvP, but also custom games. This is something we were desperate for. We had a lot of people playing Exo Primal. We wanted to play against them all. The only way we could do it in the beta test was to just click matchmake at the same time and hope for the best. But according to what they've sent us, they have a roadmap of new content, new maps, new suits, all that stuff coming every 2 to 3 months over the next 12 months at least, and then going forward with that as well. So this is a game that is ready to produce its next big content. Let's talk about the issues then. Those are all the pros. What issues did we run into? Definitely something very weird was happening with the matchmaking. We tried to figure it out. Now, I will say we had some Australians on the team, and I don't know whether the algorithm or whatever was trying to make sure that we were matched with people of the same ping. So what we did is moved one of our Australians onto the other team and see if that worked. Eventually, we did get a game together, so it might be that. But we also found that sometimes the matchmaking, if crossplay was enabled, led to some problems. And then sometimes if we turned crossplay back on, it would work. But we did have several occasions where matchmaking wasn't working. I assume the devs saw that. They were probably watching the stream and are working on resolving that because it was very frustrating. You would click matchmaking and then just nothing would happen. But then ultimately it would fix it out. Variety. They promised a lot of variety. I really want to see it because I want to come back to this game. I certainly want more raid bosses. I would love more game modes. That's what I'm after out of this because for sure, if it's kind of more of the same, I could see myself getting a little tired of it. If it's not giving me that kind of variety. I was hoping the raid boss would proc more often. It was really nice though, and I have to say that every time we did a couple of levels, up until what the cap is in the beta, we got new missions, new maps, and things like that were opening up. We started chasing the cube. We now had to collect things at the end and make things like that happen, which then led to a lot of other types of strategies needing to be developed. Which then leads me to my final issue that I implore the devs to make sure they take really good care of. And that is a possibility of a very, very serious meta forming. It's really hard when you have so much variety that people can choose from, is that people don't really people tend to set into what is best and actually be a little offensive and sometimes rude to people who aren't fitting their meta. And certainly when it comes to people who are like, I only play this. I only play this samurai tank, for example. I only play the rhino tank. I only play the roller skating healer. I only play the sniper DPS. That's all I play. And if you're not going to swap, then screw you. I'm staying as what I am. I don't care if we lose. I'm going to play what I find fun. Now, that's okay. People have more than enough right to play whatever they want. The problem is when that really makes your team insta-lose. I don't feel that now, but after only a few hours of play, it's something I'm always wary of when you have this much variety. It's like, oh, that tank is just so much worse than this tank. And balancing could be a big, big problem in an environment like this, especially with 5-player teams, and especially for the players who do enjoy a bit of PvP. If you're not following the currently accepted PvP meta, then you're basically just trashing the whole team, and it leads to all kinds of problems, all those kinds of things. That's what I really do not want to have happen to Exo Primal, because for us playing with friends, it was super fun to everybody just play whatever you want. But even us, we were definitely asking questions like, does anybody want to try tank now? Well, you know, I kind of prefer tank. Okay, anybody going to be the support now? I kind of want to try DPS. Okay, I'll go support because it is needed. Or it felt like it was needed to have that. You can outfit everybody with their own personal heal, but you give up the railgun cannon for that. So, and frankly, if you are doing a bit of PvP, having a healer is really, really goddamn useful to heal people right back up. And I would be very careful as to how powerful healing is. I noticed I only needed to land a few shots in order to not only fully heal somebody from low, but to also overshield them, which you can do to provide them like a buffer zone. And it might be a case of extremely good healers, which obviously I am not after a few hours of play, but the people who invest a lot of time into it might be able to sort of nullify an entire enemy team unless they're using ults. Because they're so good at what they do that they just can top people very, very quickly, because there's a lot of tools to do that. So something to be aware of in the PvP environment versus the PvE. Overall, though, as I've said it before, I was really pleasantly surprised by this. My issues in terms of variety seem to have already been solved when the game comes out. So I really will look and update you when that actually happens to make sure that follows through. But issues with just like queuing and things like that, which is obviously something that they're very aware of. And in terms of the raid bosses, that is my pride and joy. I'm a raider at heart, and you give me a giant raid boss, especially a Neo Tyrannosaurus Rex, I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, which is what I did. So that's my thoughts on Exo Primal. That is my feedback for right now, and I'll update you when it comes out. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.